Good morning and welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. I'm Bill Rote, a member of the Worship Associates Ministry here at the church. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers we may have to our church and call your attention to the special note for you, aptly titled Welcome Guests and Newcomers, on the back side of the order of service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. I would also like to call your attention inside your order of service for information about the day of service next Saturday, which we'll have more information about in just a moment. If you're viewing this service online, you can still sign up for projects. There are plenty of outdoor projects where you won't be in close proximity with others, and we would love for you to join us in the fellowship of service to our community. As we continue with reopening, I want to mention a few things to keep in mind. We are masking inside on Sunday mornings as a way of striving to be an inclusive community. After the service, we invite you to gather in the two different areas. The courtyard is mask optional. It's a mask optional space for fellowship. And the area behind the Jones building, which includes the porch, grassy area, and the playground, is a space where masking is mandatory. We are currently not passing offering baskets, so please make sure to make your donation online or place your donation in the offering baskets as you exit the sanctuary. Our virtual coffee hour today will be at 11:30 and hosted by Rachel Rose and the Welcoming Ministry. The Zoom link is in the weekly announcements and the Sunday morning email. Our minister is Reverend Tom Belote, who's on sabbatical, and our preacher this morning is our sabbatical minister, Reverend Alison. Please turn off any cell phones or silence them during our service to maintain a worshipful experience. Now we will have a Within These Walls for the day of service.
Hey, Costello, what's up?
Well, on March 5th, I hear there's a doubleheader.
Baseball. You love baseball, right?
I love baseball. So tell me all about March 5th. For example, who's on first?
Yes, exactly.
Who?
Absolutely.
Come on, what's happening? What's the name of the player on first?
No, who's on first? What's on second?
I give up.
You know, I do too. Let's give up. Let's stop the comedy.
Here's what's happening. We start with a continental breakfast at 8:30, then everyone goes to their day of service projects.
And at noon, we'll have a lunch, starting at noon.
We'll have music to get into a celebrating mood.
And not only that, but at lunch, we're going to have a visit from Wool E. Bull, the official mascot of the Durham Bulls baseball team.
And you know what?
What?
He's bringing vouchers for 5 pairs of tickets.
And starting today, that's today, we are now going to be able to sell those tickets. In fact, you saw them coming down the aisle a second ago. And you buy a raffle ticket for $5, and that gets you a chance to win a pair of tickets for a day of your choice game at Durham Bulls Park.
Yes, and all the money's going to go to the Interfaith Council for Social Service.
Hey, that's terrific. And what else is there?
Well, here's what else. We have 24 volunteer projects, inside and outside. You can sign up to do a little farm work, or you can write postcards or letters for social justice.
So sign up now, as Bill said, for your favorite project on the church website, or you can sign out right after the service at our table for the day of service. Some projects already have a full complement of volunteers, and others still need your help. So we need you to sign up, your family, bring your friends too, by the way. For example, gardening at El Centro Hispanic in Carborough.
Making shawls for hospice clients.
And you can actually sign up to help people sign up for the blood drive on March 17th, as I'm touting right here.
And you can do gardening at Wildflower Land Farm that produces food for the Tables Project.
And also, we will have a virtual project available all day long, and it's called Right Here, Right Now, and you'll hear more about that at the day of service.
So while you're here for breakfast or lunch, or both, be sure and get your annual pledge drive packet. That is the second part of the double header.
And thank you very much for supporting our beloved community.
By helping us not get out of the park. But by the way, what's the name of the third baseman?
I don't know.
Who?
Well, he plays third base. Thank you.
I imagine that some of you, most of you probably, come together in worship this morning with a heavy heart. We are saddened by the invasion of Ukraine, of a sovereign state, by the loss of life, by the destruction of homes, and the many people who are fleeing those homes for safe havens. Our sixth principle calls us to promote, to act for peace, for freedom, for justice throughout not only our own communities, but throughout the world. And what is happening in Russia and Ukraine goes against those principles. And so, with what little we can do here, supporting those who are oppressed abroad, Glenn has chosen to play for us the Ukrainian national anthem. And so as he plays, I invite you into a time of reflection on what is happening to people overseas. Despite the news of war, there is some good news in this country. Recently, 2 court decisions have come down giving convictions to the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, the civil rights convictions. And so we can, although we are saddened by the circumstances that brings about these 2 convictions, we can be glad that some accountability is occurring for those people who are murdering people unnecessarily. It is fitting that these decisions come down in February, for February is the month that we observe Black History Month. The observance was created to lift up the accomplishments as well as the struggles of Black Americans. In other words, the month and our focus on that month is to make people who are often considered invisible, visible. The great James Baldwin once said, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world. And then you read. It was books that taught me the things that tormented me the most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive." We are connected in our trials and torments, our joys and wonderments. Let us light our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, for this community's connections.
If you would join me in reading the words of our chalice lighting, which are in your order of service. Beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation, by each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. Now, if you would please rise as you're willing and able, and join us in singing hymn 1017 in the teal hymnal, Building a New Way. For our readings this morning, we share 3 writings by Black UU professionals. The first 2 speak to their own experience in UU congregations, but admit their experiences are not unique. These readings may discomfort some and be welcome voices for others. I invite you to listen with open hearts. The first piece is by Reverend Derek Jackson, Director of Contextual Ministry at the Meadville Lombard Theological School, UU. He writes in the book, Centering, Unitarian Universalism is my theological home, but it doesn't speak to my Black identity. I often ache for the music that makes my heart soar, that brings the divine into the room during worship. I miss ministry that is grounded in and speaks to my Black identity. I miss a message of hope that is grounded in an understanding of struggle. I miss all these things, and yet, theologically, I can be nowhere else than where I am. So I make my home here in Unitarian Universalism, as imperfect as it is, and find ways to stay grounded, to stay connected, and to stay whole. The second piece is by Duro K. Farrar, Director of Music at the First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon. Look, as a black man, white people often frustrate me, but there's nothing inherently wrong with being white. And if you ask me, there's nothing inherently wrong with lacking racial diversity. That is, unless you're a Unitarian Universalist and your faith demands it of you. The problem is around the ethics of whiteness, how white people manage the power they have claimed. The trouble comes in how that privilege and power are used to stifle the lives of those who have none. This moment in our tradition calls for both introspection and a charge for bold commitment. We have practiced hope. We have practiced making promises. Now we must promise action. Finally, a piece by the Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, President of Star King School for the Ministry, UU. The truth is this: if there is no justice, there will be no peace. If we cannot bring justice into the small circles of our individual lives, we cannot hope to bring justice to the world. And if we do not bring justice to the world, none of us is safe and none of us will survive. Nothing that we do is more important than making justice real, here where we are. Hard as diversity is, it is our most important work.
From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the voice of hope. It's the voice of peace. It's the voice of every man. From a distance, you all have enough, and no one is in need. And there are no guns, no bombs, and no disease, no hungry mouths to feed. From a distance, we are instruments marching in a common band, playing songs of hope, playing songs of peace. They're the songs of every man. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. From a distance, you look like my friend, even though we are at war. From a distance, I cannot comprehend what all this war is for. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. And it's the hope of hopes, it's the love of loves, it's the heart of every man. It's the hope of hopes, it's the love of loves. This is the song of every man. And God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. Oh, God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.
The Spirit of love, of life, the God of our hearts, is watching us. May they smile upon all that we say and do. Although they may smile, what you hear this morning may discomfort some. After all, ministers are supposed to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. In our readings, you heard from three prominent black voices within our Unitarian Universalist, UU, tradition. I am centering black voices this morning so that we can hear the truth that they speak with love. White people must listen to black and other people of color's perspectives and experiences, because that is something that white people cannot experience directly. Whatever our identity, we can be like a tree standing tall amidst numerous identical trees. While maturing, our trunk and leafy branches grow majestically up towards the sky and sunlight as our roots dig down deep into nutrient-rich soil, securing us to one spot. Like all trees, we cannot pick up our roots and move elsewhere. If our trees had eyes, our vision would be hindered by the trees immediately surrounding us, blocking our view of what lies beyond. With limited view, we can only imagine more trees like ourselves lying beyond. We humans know that there are many more human communities and cultures as there are many types of trees. But like a tree, when we surround ourselves with like people, we are equally rooted with one perspective. It's easy to believe only one culture exists. White supremacists wish to stop America from being multicultural. They want their white culture to dominate at the expense of all others. America has never been a monoculture, and current demographic shifts prove their efforts will be futile. It's easy to see Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and other neo-Nazi groups as white supremacists that must be countered. But closer to home and harder to see is unconscious bias and systemic racism within those of us who identify as white and wish to be anti-racist allies to people of color. As Duro Farrar said, our Unitarian Universalist faith demands that our congregations de-center white culture. I repeat his words. This moment in our tradition calls for both introspection and a charge for bold commitment. We have practiced hope. We have practiced making promises. Now we must promise action. We have been at this work for decades, but we have miles to go before we reach the promised land. Let me reference the Hebrew Bible again with the Tower of Babel story. A common interpretation suggests God is angry at the hubris of humans for building a tower to heaven where God resides. So God punishes humans by scattering the people and creating different languages. But hear the text. Come, let us build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, that we may make us a name, lest we be scattered over all the earth. The reason for building the tower was protection, not to challenge God. Since God came down to observe their activity, the tower height didn't threaten God. Making a single name meant unifying themselves. They want to be rooted in one place, with one language, one culture, and one perspective. But God wants them to disperse and make all the earth their home. By creating multiple languages and ethnicities, God wills diversity. At the time of its writing, the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews, lived in exile in Babylon under its imperial cultural dominance. The text reminds God's people not to assimilate, but maintain their own culture. White dominance here mirrors Babylonians. And just as God insists in diversity, so we should decenter white culture and allow other voices to be heard, other cultures to be celebrated. Diversity enriches us all and may provide new answers for meeting many, many of life's challenges. Getting out of my own white rootedness has been both a gift and a challenge during my ministry. While I was serving at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Athens, Georgia, I had many opportunities to cross cultural boundaries. Through my involvement in the Interfaith Clergy Partnership, I knew many Black pastors. We formed the partnership together expressly so that religious leaders across racial and religious boundaries would form trusting relationships. After Ferguson and the killing of too many Black men and women by police or vigilantes, we knew we would be unprepared to respond meaningfully or collectively if Athens experienced something similar. We knew our segregation must end. We also knew it would not be easy. We knew we would make mistakes. But we committed ourselves to the work of listening and learning from each other. I'll never forget when a Black pastor shared some of his family background with me. He knew where his ancestors had been enslaved and that his family tree included the white master who fathered a child on an enslaved woman. I say on, not with, because an enslaved person held no rights over their own body. It was sobering to hear him tell about his white ancestor who effectively raped his Black ancestor. Another time, a Black pastor recalled seeing the bodies of lynched Black men hanging from trees. when he was young. I can't imagine his trauma or pain. I can't imagine how he maintains faith in God and the goodness of humanity. I can understand why trusting white people is not easy. In 2019, at the University of Georgia's School of Social Work's annual symposium held at our church, Crystal Coburn, a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, gave opening remarks. I knew Crystal when we worked together to plan a training for the Interfaith Partnership, so I eagerly awaited her talk about difficult conversations around race. In those remarks, she told us about the time she gave birth to one of her children in the hospital. She was in the full throes of labor, and her pain and struggle were loudly and fully on display. In her hearing, a white nurse commented, "We have to get this woman under control." Crystal, a black woman, heard that as a racist comment, a microaggression adding to her delivery pain. In recalling the event, Crystal said she doubted the nurse would have said the same thing to an emotional white woman. Getting under control is a historic racial phrase implying blacks are wild, primitive, and out of control, something white people supposedly never are. Perspective is everything in Crystal's story. If you are a white woman and the nurse said this to you, my guess is you would not have been hurt like Crystal. If I, a white woman, had said to Crystal, "I'm sure the nurse didn't mean it that way. You are too sensitive," I'd be adding insult to injury by telling her, "She's wrong and I know better." That's white supremacy. Good intentions do not eliminate a bad impact. That excuse lets the offender off without real accountability and dismisses their harm as inconsequential. To stop the harm, white people need to listen and accept the truths told by people of color. We need to forge relationships across cultural and racial lines in order to hear their truths. I had years in Athens to do just that, but I'm new to Chapel Hill. Partly due to the pandemic, I've been rooted in place with people who look mostly like me. As pandemic worries decrease and in-person activities increase, I will pop my white bubble. There is too much at stake for me and perhaps you to do otherwise. Daily, we are reminded of racism. Objections to a black woman serving on the Supreme Court, a class action lawsuit against the NFL for its ownership and hiring practices, bomb threats at historic black colleges, preventing uncomfortable history for white people from being taught in schools, and COVID's disproportionate impact on communities of color, all evidence ongoing racism. We can do the sacred spiritual work of anti-racism. We can wrestle with what it means to be a majority white faith with anti-racist intentions. We can listen and truly hear the pain caused by unconscious bias that even liberals perpetuate. We can integrate our religious or spiritual faith with our social engagement. One cannot exist without the other. The day before Reverend Tom returns to this pulpit after his sabbatical, this church hosts a workshop led by a diversity trainer, Tema Oken. A new racial equality curriculum will also begin, and the congregation will undertake the creation of a new vision and strategic plan for the immediate future. Together, we can decide what role anti-racism will play in that vision. I believe we will commit to increased learning and practice around anti-oppression and multicultural inclusion. I believe we will commit to countering ignorance and aggression in our churches and wider communities. I believe one day we will be together, celebrating in true harmony. I believe one day we will reach the promised land. May it be so.
And there was, oh, thank you. We sang this almost a year ago as a virtual choir with different people, some of which are not with us today. But that time we were longing for a day when we'll be together again, and we're still longing for that day. Some of us are together again. It's a very different world than it was last February, but so we want to sing this for the people that we still hope will come join us together.
On the day we are together again, on the day we are together again, I will pull you in close like a hoop with no end. On the day we are together again, we will share the same table again. We will share the same table again. I will pass you the salt, the candlelight will bend when we eat at the same table again.
We will walk round the block hand in hand. We will walk round the block hand in hand. We'll stop for a snack at the taco truck stand. We will walk round the block hand in hand. Someday
We'll go back to work. Someday we will go back to work. May we be all respect our word. Someday we
Each week, we hold a time in our service for the sharing of significant joys and sorrows. If you have a personal joy or sorrow you would like to share, you're invited to come forward, drop a stone in the water, speak your name into the microphone, and briefly share your joy or your sorrow. I place this first stone for all the people of Ukraine and hold them in our hearts as they go through this period of trial and suffering.
Bill, would you also place a stone for Julie Worth? Julie asked that we hold her and her family in our hearts. It is a stone of sorrow for the death of her brother. He was under hospice care, but his death arrived far too soon. Thank you.
One stone is for my mother-in-law who died last weekend, and the other stone is for my cousin and her family that have been displaced from their home in Kiev and have gone to Poland.
Hi, my name is Becky Wilkes, and I placed two stones. One is for a friend of mine, Sean Curtis, who lost her mother recently. She was able to be with her. She had a brief illness, but she lives in England, so it's been hard. And then I have another friend, Irina Lecht, who immigrated from Ukraine when she was 10 years old in 1990. And I just want you to hold her and her parents in your thoughts. Her parents live in New York. She lives here in Chapel Hill, and she's been having a rough week.
Hi, I'm Jenna Kaisen. This stone is for continued concern for a student at my school who was struck by a car crossing the street in a crosswalk. My student and her best friend is still in the hospital. Continued concern for her, but also a joy that my student, although wheelchair bound and with a brain injury, is ready to start learning, and I get to go to her house and teach her.
I am Adam Good. That stone is for the citizens of Russia who oppose this war and are shocked and appalled and somewhat helpless to change what their government is doing.
Good morning. I'm Ginger Guidry, and this stone is it's a sorrow for a work situation I'm dealing with. I lead a team of about 35 people, and I have an employee who I'm really struggling with right now, and a lot of it is the past couple years that is manifesting in our workplace. It's very challenging. I'm trying to balance, accountability with understanding, trying to do the right thing for the whole team. So it's very challenging. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Bonnie Nelson, and I just wanted to share the joy of the Special Buddies program that finished up yesterday with the Friendship Forum. It was a month of great activities and getting to know a new youth in the church. And if you haven't done it before, I encourage you to do it next year because it's wonderful. There were about 36 adults and children that participated, and the kids just love it, and I love it. And it was great.
Hi, I'm Harrison. This stone is for the U.S. troops that have been sent to Ukraine to help out. As a veteran myself, I know that takes a toll on not just the service members, but the families. So I just wanted to put that down for them.
For all of the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts, may we be there for one another to celebrate and to comfort. The following prayer was written by Reverend Ethelred Brown, the first Black Unitarian minister, ordained in 1912, a time when racial unrest following the Civil War, emancipation, and Reconstruction were still fresh. Perhaps a time not unlike our own. As we face a troubled and a puzzled world, we too are troubled and puzzled. As our fond dreams remain unrealized and our bright hopes of yesterday wither in the bitter disappointments of today, our courage fails, our spirits droop, our faith trembles, and frustrated, we bow our heads in despair as we pray for peace in our time. O God, may we be at peace with the world, with ourselves, and with Thee. May we know that without love, there never will be peace. Teach us, therefore, to love. Let us sit a moment in silence. Teach us, therefore, to love. Hush, number 1040 in the Teal hymnal, is a traditional African-American spiritual. Though it was born during America's past enslavement period, it also speaks for today's oppressed and marginalized. May we hear and feel in our souls this cry for freedom. Please remain seated for our singing.
Somebody's calling my name. Just in my room. Soon one morning, death come creeping in my room. Soon one morning, death come creeping in my room. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Continuing to lift up Black voices this morning, I close with the words of the Reverend William R. Sinkford, former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, now senior minister at First Unitarian Church, Portland, Oregon. He writes, "There is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Help us to hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. That is our dream." Let us commit to realizing that dream by singing our closing hymn included in the online order of service and in your teal hymnal, Fire of Commitment. Please rise in body or in spirit.
From the light of days remembered, turns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of the living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can be
Before we read our words for extinguishing the chalice, please remember to leave your gifts as you exit today. And don't forget, either online or in person, sign up for our day of service next Saturday. We're going to have wonderful weather for it. Please join in reading the words for our extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. If you're comfortable joining hands during our final song of Shalom, just hold your hands down. If not, cross your heart. Thank you.